Hi, I'm Ken Ceizler.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
And you're listening to Play That Rock and Roll.
I want my MTV. I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
Too much is never enough.
Ain't working.
This is not a test, this is Play That Rock and Roll. I'm your host, Joseph K, and like the song at the start says, just call me Joe. Today, our guest is Ken Ceizler. Ken Ceizler is a former director and VP of production for MTV. And when I say MTV, I mean music television. That's right, 80s MTV, real MTV. Ken was with MTV from the start. He was hired before they went on the air, and he was actually the guy who directed the first 5 hours of MTV's debut broadcast. And during his time there, he directed all kinds of programming, including MTV documentaries about artists like Asia, Hall & Oates, and even Bruce Springsteen. Ken left MTV in the late 80s and went on to have a very successful career in show business. Currently, he is the co-host of The Gary and Kenny Show, which is a podcast he hosts alongside former Saturday Night Live cast member Gary Kroeger. MTV's impact on classic rock cannot be overstated, so I jumped at the chance to have Ken on the show to share some of his memories of MTV's golden era. In this interview, we talk about how he got the job at MTV, what he did during his time there, what that first day of broadcast was like, his experiences directing artist documentaries, his memories of MTV Awards shows and Christmas parties, why he eventually left MTV, and what he does now on his podcast, The Gary and Kenny Show. If you want to learn more about Ken, be sure to check out The Gary and Kenny Show. All the episodes are in video on YouTube, and you can get the podcast versions wherever podcasts are hosted. And of course, The Gary and Kenny Show is on Facebook and Twitter as well. So without further ado, here's my conversation with former director and VP of production at MTV during its golden era, and also current host of The Gary and Kenny Show, Ken Ceizler. Welcome to the show. You are currently the co-host of the Gary and Kenny podcast, which is also a YouTube series. But for the purposes of today, I brought you on the show so we could talk about some of your experiences working at MTV during MTV's heyday, back when it was actually music television. Right. So for those who don't know, can you tell us what you did at MTV back in the 80s?
Well, just before I do, and I know for the people with the podcast, they won't see it, but your YouTube, you have the I Want My MTV thing in the background. You have that all the time, or you just did this special for this one?
Just for you, Ken.
Oh, wow. Okay, little set decoration. Very nice.
Yes.
Okay, I will tell my story of MTV. I was actually... I'm from New York. I went to NYU Film School. I moved out to Los Angeles to pursue television. And while I was out here looking for jobs, a friend of mine called me up and said, they're looking for directors for this new channel that's kind of like radio on TV. And so I wanted to be a director. At the time, I think I was a production assistant on a game show. And because I was coming back to New York anyhow, I flew back and I got set up to meet with a guy, Robert Morton, who was the creative director at the time. Robert Morton then went on to become the executive producer of Letterman. I walked in and I expected him to ask me about all my credentials as far as television was concerned. But he did the most inappropriate thing that you could do now. But 30 years ago, it was kind of funny. He said, "Hey, are you Jewish?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "You're hired. Come on down. I want you to meet somebody." I mean, I think we got along pretty well. It wasn't that stuff, but I did have, some credits as far as a director were concerned. That mostly I got when I was at NYU Film School, which was fantastic for me. What they were looking for were control room directors who would direct the VJ segments. Okay. So I was there. I got hired in June of '81. So I was there a few months before we launched. So while I was there, we were literally just putting the pieces to the puzzle together and trying to figure out how we integrate the VJ segments with the music videos. So that's kind of what happened. I got selected out of the 3 other directors. I've always mentioned this to see if someday it'll be the answer to a trivia question. But I was the first person to direct the first 5 hours of the channel.
Yeah. It's
so if that ever comes up in conversation, Joe,
that's gonna
the answer.
That's gonna be coming up pretty quick. We're gonna dive into that. So okay, you got started in June '81. How did it pay?
That's a very good question. I don't think. Listen, the truth of the matter is that the great thing about MTV was it gave people who really didn't have the credentials to be directors or producers or executive producers. But the thing was, we're going to give you that title and we're going to give you the opportunity. I don't really remember, but I'm going to guess it was probably about $500 a week.
Was that pretty good for New York?
Yeah, it was a pay. Well, at that time you could. I guess so. I made a living. Actually, in the beginning, I stayed in my sister's apartment, which helped.
Okay.
But no, I quickly moved up, and then I was making a nice living there. I loved it there. It was phenomenal. It was a great job. It was so much fun. We were all young. The way it really was set up was there were people just hired from the world of radio and music. And then, because the people in the radio and the music department didn't know how to do TV production, they went out and they hired a bunch of people from TV production, which I was one of those people, and put us together. And we didn't know anything about music, anything about TV, but it was great. It was. I look back on it and go, my goodness, how lucky was I? Yeah.
So you got the job in '81. How long were you at MTV total? When did you leave?
About 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So like almost the whole decade.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. So did you say that you moved up and you were a VP of programming?
Oh, no, not programming. No.
Oh, okay.
My initial thing was I had been directing the VJ segments in the studio. An opportunity came up for me to go into management. I took that. I became creative director, whatever that meant. I guess it meant I helped, pick out the colors and things. Then I became executive producer of the studio. And then I became vice president of the studio.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
Was,
so
it was mostly just around all the productions that was taking place at the MTV studios.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about the couple of months right before launch, like when your first couple of weeks there. Like, can you sort of describe like what the vibe was? Were people thinking that this was going to be a big hit? Did people think this was going to be kind of a one and done and flash in the pan? Like, what was the feelings of anticipation before the actual launch?
I think for most of us, we weren't really sure once we put all the elements together what it really was going to look like. We kind of saw them individually. We would see the promos. We said, the promos look cool. And we'd see the VJ segments. Well, that looks cool. And then we see, the music videos and go, well, that looks cool. But you didn't really know what the cake was going to look like, So, and nobody really heard of it. And in the very beginning, what was interesting is like, we were, as David Letterman, I remember, referred to us as cable weasels. Nobody outside of New York knew about MTV. And nobody in New York knew about it because we weren't on Manhattan Cable. The first place that we actually launched was in New Jersey.
Right.
And we had to take a bus out to see it. But in the months going up there, it really was because we didn't know what it was going to look like and how much work we had to do and how to design it. It was really, I remember we worked a lot. It was like 12, 15-hour days of people just scrambling to put stuff together. And and we worked and we worked and worked, and the graphic artists were working. I mean, everybody was like really very busy and excited. It was wonderful because we were all about the same age, which was, I was like 25. I think I was 24 or 25. And everybody was about that young. So, I mean, imagine all of these people. And by the way, Bob Pittman, who was our leader at the time, I think he was 27.
Man.
when we launched it. So, I guess it must have been very similar to what you see with the .com, thing, where people who are 25, 26 years old are becoming we didn't become billionaires, but are launching, new companies with young people.
I was going to say, when I was 23 and 27, I was working at a pizza place. So that's a much cooler way to spend your 20s.
Yeah, no, exactly. The MTV gave people the opportunity. I mean, I wasn't qualified to move into a control room. I wanted to, and I knew I would be able to, but they gave me the chance, and I went into the control room as a director. And from then on, I was able to call myself a director. And that was really the springboard for me for the rest of my career.
Do you know how they or why they picked you to direct that first shift of 5 hours?
I was Jewish. No, I don't know. I think it could have been anybody. It could have been either one. The other directors was Jeff Bolton and the guy Steve Lawrence, and we all got along. We all liked each other very well, so it wasn't competitive.
Maybe it was like a bravery thing. I mean, you must have been pretty. Was there a level of terror that was going on?
No, I think she just had to pick somebody, and it was the first time that I ever won anything. But anyhow, so Sue Steinberg was our boss, and she somehow, for whatever reason, just picked me out of the three. But there was nothing to suggest that I was better than any of those two guys who were phenomenal, in themselves. And we're all,
of course,
love those guys. So it's all good. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, shoot, tell us about that day. So it launches in was it August 1st, 1981?
Well, it launched on August 1st, but we weren't live. The VJ segments were pre-recorded.
Oh.
Yeah, the way it worked was there was what they call NOC, Network Operations Center, at the end of Long Island. I'm trying to remember, it was like Smithtown, Long Island or something like that. And that's where all the music videos were actually.
Right.
And what we did was we recorded, we would have a playlist to see where the VJ segments would come, whatever. And we record a VJ segment. And we, the back announce, we'd look at the playlist and go, okay, well, this song just played. Now we're going to this song, and we'd promo this. So we put all the information in because we knew on paper what they were going to be playing. And we would take all those tapes that were recorded. I can't remember how far in advance they were recorded, whether it was a day or two or a week. I don't think it was a week, but probably a couple of days. And all of that, those recordings were physically, maybe they were satellite. I don't know this part. You'd have to bring on somebody like an Andy Setos who knew how to do it. They might have satellited it out to Smithtown, and then they integrated all the materials together, or we physically had it shipped out. I'm not really sure which one happened.
Oh, wow. I did not realize that, because it's certainly, I went back, and on YouTube you can find the first 2 hours pretty much as broadcast, a couple of things cut out because of copyright or whatever, but it certainly has the live feel, in particular with the VJ segments. I remember there was at least one point where Mark introduced the wrong video, so I always had this idea that it was like red hot live. And
no, that was just like our mistake or somebody's mistake in the paperwork. It was like, if on the paperwork it said this clip was supposed to run, and that's kind of like, I don't know if that was our fault, NOC's fault, or the guy who created the the playlist.
Sure.
Yeah, but at the time, I know people like, were we excited? I don't know if we were excited or nervous or whatever. I guess we were. Yeah, it was finally happening. And the story that we tell all the time is that because nobody in Manhattan had ever heard of MTV, because it wasn't on Manhattan cable, and on August 1st, in order for us to see it launch, they got a bus, and we all hopped on the bus and drove out to, and I should remember, but I can't remember the town in New Jersey, but I should. Anyhow, and we went to this club, and we looked up and, we saw John Lack is the voice that goes, ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
John Lack is the real original founder of it. Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll. And that took off, and the Buggles came on, and, and we were off and running. But again, off and running for the first year, we were still not in Manhattan, so nobody really knew who we were. We would stand out, even though I was a TV director, big shot, whatever. John Sykes, who was kind of our head, and Fred Seibert, who was also in charge of making the MTV, and John Sykes would run around and say, here's T-shirts, go out on the street and give them out. And we would go on the street and give out MTV T-shirts to people.
Oh, okay.
To get them interested, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw there was a documentary called I Want My MTV that was made in 2019. I saw it here in Milwaukee as part of the Milwaukee Film Festival. And I recall them talking about that story you just mentioned of going off on the bus to this bar that nobody knew what was going on, but you guys are all there watching it on a TV there. Can you what are your memories of that day being in that bar? I mean, was it elation? Were you guys getting drunk? Were the other patrons confused about why you were there?
Well, no, listen, it's a bar, so people are generally just interested in getting a drink and, getting a buzz. So I don't think anybody paid attention to, what was happening. But, I don't think more than anything that, you just, yes, it was fun, and I think we're all excited. And then it was let's have a party. MTV was a lot of partying. We did do a lot of partying. There was a lot to celebrate. We celebrated it. So, that was the start of our celebration. And then we just went in. Then each department just went off doing its own thing, and we came, and it was great there for
Were your
it's
eyes
interesting what's happened now?
Oh, sure, yeah. That night, were your eyes glued to the TV because that was your direction, or did you feel totally comfortable because you had already done it?
Oh no, I wasn't going to watch it. I mean, I think I really don't have much of a memory after that because I do like my cocktails, so I don't really know. So yeah, I mean, I think it was just turned into just having a good time. Yeah, that's cool. Basically all I remember from that evening.
Oh, for sure. So then if you were directing those first 5 hours, did you have a say in what videos got picked or what order they went in or anything like that?
I had no, those were all decided elsewhere. I mean, my responsibility was the VJs were on the set and what camera they would be looking at, basically what camera they'd be looking at. And that was it,
How did you like working with the VJs?
Well, we're all still, we're all very close. And
oh, really? That's awesome.
Yes. And they're all close. And we lost one of the best, which was JJ, who was a pleasure. But every single one of them, we stay in touch on Facebook. And, I went back for we got a 40th anniversary just recently. And to see Alan and Mark, and who, again, we stay in touch with. So, no, the VJs were a remarkable chemistry of people that came together. Everybody liked each other. There was no drama. There was none of that. I think they were all, out. They were rooting for each other.
Well, okay, so no competitive vibes or anything like that.
I don't think so. I think in a way they all had they brought a different quality to with them. So it wasn't competitive in that way. They, Mark's credibility from radio, JJ's credibility from radio, but he's a little bit more old school. Nina was, personality is attractive, but, and then Martha was, this young person, and Alan had, he was fun, just a fun personality. So I think that it wasn't competitive like that. It wasn't like you had two funny guys vying to be too funny, who's the funniest person in the room.
Sure.
No,
sure.
They've all been strong supporters of one another. And
very cool.
I'm glad to say that we're all very good friends.
During your time working with them, were you ever tempted to find a way to get yourself on camera, or were you strictly a behind the camera guy?
Oh no, strictly. The thing is, and I appreciate the fact that this is a rock and roll music show, but
Absolutely.
as much as I love music and I listen to music all the time, and I'm a real big fan, I can't, work or live or do anything without music. But I was not like a music, I didn't know music. I didn't know the third cut of the fourth album of the so-and-so artist and where that came from. I didn't have that kind of background. The people from the music industry knew that kind of stuff. I had no credibility to go out and do that, which is kind of an interesting story that, I kind of feel I have to tell now, and I'll mention this to Mark Goodman, which I think I told him. At one point we were doing a documentary. We did a Hall & Oates documentary, and I was the producer director, and we went down to where they were recording.
I'm Mark Goodman. MTV visited with Daryl Hall and John Oates in the studio as they recorded their new album called H2O.
This gospel piece.
Mark was supposed to do the interview.
Okay.
And he got sick and he couldn't do it. So I did the interview, but not on camera, just asking the questions. And I thought I was fine, but I didn't know any really good, credible music questions. I'd ask questions like, what was it like when you heard your song on the radio? And they were kind of rolling their eyes at they were very pedestrian questions I was asking.
Sure.
But I went through it, and that was when I really kind of realized, when you talk to these artists, they really want you to know their music and and the history behind it, and what that song, and what was the third cut on the fourth album that got this, and whatever, and what producer did you use, and what thing, and why did you make the selection, and all. They like to talk about that stuff in depth. I didn't have that. I absolutely did not have that. So,
okay. Well, besides that interaction, how did you get along with John and Daryl?
Oh, fine. I mean, it wasn't like we became friends. I mean, they were pretty much, they would do their album, and it was just me and a camera guy and an audio guy just kind of flies on the wall bothering them. And I look back on it, was really interesting. It was great fun. It was at Electric Lady Studios in Greenwich Village, which is a very famous place. And me and my camera crew spent, about a week in there while they were recording the album, and it was just really fun to be there. I mean, there's some interesting stuff. Tommy Mottola, who was in the room all the time we were there, because people didn't really know MTV, what it was going to be and how we were going to handle the artists. And part of this also is the biggest thing for MTV's success was our content we were getting for free, the music videos. We were asking the music companies to give us the content for free.
Yep.
They questioned whether or not that was a good move. Why should we be giving it to them for free? So we had to prove that if you gave it to us for free, we would increase your record sales. And that was the big thing that we really were trying to work on, is how do we increase a record sale? So me going down and doing a quote unquote documentary on Hall & Oates was really about me creating an infomercial for the record that was going to come out. So Tommy Mottola was very much in control of everything that we did and stuff like that. So and the boys didn't, like I say, at this time people didn't really understand what it was and why are we giving all of our music to these people. What's in it for us? Yeah. So it was a big thing. It wasn't until MTV was given the credit, and I'll tell you how that happened, for selling records. That
go ahead.
Got credibility.
Yeah, let's hear it. What's that?
Bob Pittman knew that the way in order for us to get over this, pessimism on the part of the music industry was to prove that we could make them money.
Yeah.
And I always remember there was a door that nobody knew what on the other side of the door was, but I think it was revealed on the other side of that door, there were like dozens and dozens and dozens of people on phone banks. Oh. And what they were doing is they were calling record stores around the country. 100 all day long. They would call record stores. And what they do is they compare our playlist to record sales.
Oh, wow.
So they would look at our playlist and go, oh, and we would experiment. We say, let's put this guy into rotation.
Yeah.
And they put him in rotation. And then we call up all the record stores, not me, but this is what they were doing, and say, okay, how is, and let's say, the Hall & Oates album doing? And they go, wow, it got a real bump in the last couple of days. And we go, well, you know what? We play Hall & Oates in the past. And when we started to show those numbers to the record companies, they saw the value. And that's when things really started to shift. Then they started to send their artists down for interviews. Then they saw, okay, this is making us money.
Yep.
Interesting. Do you have any old tapes of that documentary, or has that been lost to time?
No, as a matter of fact, I do have it, but I think it's on 3/4-inch tape. And I'm one of those people that threw out my 3/4-inch machine like years ago, but I do have. But I understand it is on YouTube. Somebody told me it's on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can check it out. As a matter of fact, I got a call from a student at a college here, and she is a Hall & Oates buff. Okay. And she tracked me down because she had seen that show. So she must have seen it on YouTube. She tracked me down because she wanted to ask, what were they like and all that stuff. She was very sweet. Yeah.
Oh, how cool. Okay. Oh, so did you just do that one documentary for Hall & Oates, or did you do other documentaries for other artists as well?
Okay. I don't remember the second one, but I did Bruce Springsteen.
Whoa. Okay.
I know, bro. You think I'd have a picture of me and Bruce, right? No. So anyhow, again, it was one of those things where we're going to do a documentary, which is really a promo. Bruce was touring. So I went on tour.
Is this Born in the USA? For Born in the USA?
Yeah, it must have been. I think, yeah. He was in touring. He was in New Jersey. We went with him from New Jersey. We went to some other places. Me and Joe Davola. And we went, and before we went, John Landau was Bruce Springsteen's manager. Maybe he's still, I don't know. But John was so sensitive about Bruce. Don't bother Bruce. Don't go near Bruce. I don't want to bother. Don't so there. And I think it was overly so, because when Bruce was actually incredibly nice, but John had built it up like, don't bother you. And then my boss was over the top, nervous that we were going to do something that was going to offend them and that they would pull the plug on the project. So there was, because at one time I had said to my boss, for B-roll, which is just footage you play while the artist is doing stuff, I want to go out to Asbury Park and do just film around his neighborhood, and go take shots of where he played and, all those famous iconic places. And my boss, I guess he said, John Landau said, no, you can't go. They don't want you to go. And I'm like, why can't I go to his hometown? What is that? So that's how nervous they were.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just overly cautious.
So my point being, I was a nervous wreck doing Bruce Springsteen. And I wanted to get you're very sensitive. I never got a photo with him.
Bummer.
I know. But, I can say backstage and with Bruce, because I never chatted with him because, again, I was told, stand back. But from afar and in his conversations and his demeanor, he couldn't have been a sweeter, nicer person. And I always remember his family was there, and his family was just the quintessential, wonderful, warm people. I think his father was a truck driver, his sister, his mother. They were classic, like New Jersey people, but very down to earth, wonderful.
Yeah.
People. So that was nice to see. So that was and again, going to see, I got to see Bruce play, and, nobody rocked harder than Bruce Springsteen. It was just hours and hours and hours. So that was that was a documentary I did with Bruce, and that I have not seen. That I have not seen on YouTube.
I have to imagine that is probably down because of just YouTube's copyright system, but I would almost guarantee it's out there somewhere, because Bruce bootleggers, tape traders, they are exhaustive with Bruce Springsteen material. I mean, he's got a dedicated bootleg community.
Well, anyhow, so that was Bruce. And then the other thing that I did, which was Asia, we were doing Asia was going through, I think, personnel change or whatever. And then somebody came up with the great idea, let's do Asia in Asia.
Ancient MTV saying, even a journey of 10,000 miles must begin with a single postcard.
Enter and win, and you'll fly to Tokyo to be a part of a worldwide event.
Asia in Asia.
And so then my job was, in promoting the live concert, was to go and travel to each one of the guys' homes and do a profile on them, which was supposed to be, which was to play right before the live concert. So that was interesting. That was good. That was very, and I think I'm going to get this, but when we were doing it, and I apologize, you really should know this, one of them was fired.
Yes. I think I know some of this here because I did a little digging. So what's interesting about the timing here is that, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Asia it's available for pre-order. They're doing a huge deluxe box set of their concert special, Asia in Asia. It's finally going to be out on Blu-ray. There's it's all remastered and everything. Yeah, the one at Budokan. And that's coming out next month in June. So, hey, there's some good timing going on here.
Yeah. Jeff Downs, I think it might have been. I'm not sure if
yeah.
he got...
So he was out no. He was in, John Wetton was out.
John Wetton was out. Right.
So Carl Palmer, the drummer, got his old bandmate from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Greg Lake, to step in and sing.
One member of the band has been rehearsing especially hard. Greg Lake had just 6 weeks to learn all the songs you're going to see Asia perform tonight.
One just has to play the music, and it's totally absorbing. Especially for me, because I've only been really involved with Asia's music for about 6 weeks. So it's quite an undertaking to remember everything in detail.
Right.
So that's actually and Greg Lake didn't even want to do it at first.
He didn't want to do it, and that's the thing. That's a documentary I'd like to see again. That's so funny that I haven't thought about that, but that would be an interesting documentary to see, because it was very revealing. Greg Lake was very reluctant. Greg Wetton was the sweetest. He was getting let go, and he was the sweetest guy about it. And they were all great. They were also, and what's his name? Palmer, he lived in Tenerife, which is like this volcano rock island right off of Spain. Jeff Palmer. And that was a fascinating place to go. And, he was remarkable. He's energetic. I mean, he did everything for us. And so that was a great, that was phenomenal trip. Yeah.
How cool. I mean, that struck me as really interesting because that's such a very interesting part of their timeline, where that could have gone really bad with, the singer leaving and a new one coming in who has no intention of staying very long. But I watched some video from that concert, and looks like they put on a hell of a great show. I imagine you must have had a great time at that concert.
You know what happened? Well, of course you don't know what happened. If you knew what happened, you wouldn't answer the question.
Oh, no. Were you not there?
No, I was there.
Oh, okay.
But it was there that I started not to feel particularly well.
Oh, no.
I caught a terrible Asian flu. And when everybody flew back, I couldn't fly back. I was in the hotel. No, not. I think in those days they did call it the Asian flu, but it was. I was in. I couldn't get out of. And then after the concert, and everybody went out and partied, and I partied with, but I didn't feel good. And then the next morning, I woke up with 104 fever. I could not move. I was in the bed, and when I couldn't check out, I was in there. I was basically quarantined for like 10 days until I was like at a fever for like that amount of time, and it finally broke. And I got on a plane to go back home. And then, of course, when I got back into the United States after a 16-hour flight, the customs people go, "Do you want drugs?" And I'm like, "No, I just don't feel good." Come with me. I'm just dying. I just want to go home. And I had to sit there and get integrated by the customs people. You don't look good. So anyhow,
that's hilarious.
So let me just go run through some big moments in MTV's early history, and I wonder if you have any memories from those. The first one that pops in my head is, I don't remember the year, but it would have been early 80s, a Christmas special when Billy Squier came to the MTV studios.
I'm Billy Squier. On behalf of myself and everyone here at MTV, I'd like to wish you all a happy holiday season and a terrific new year. Christmas is the time to celebrate.
I don't think I directed that. I think one of our other directors did. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't remember if it was Jeff or Steve, but I didn't direct that. But I was there at the stage. I was there at the stage when we did it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were there, though. What do you remember about that day?
Oh, nothing. He had a blast. It really is kind of like thing. We had some personalities there, Gail Sparrow and some other names that don't mean anything to any of your viewers or whatever. But they were very, very, listen, they were out of the music industry, and they liked to party and have fun, and they knew the artists, and the artists got a great kick out of doing it. Some artists did. The thing that I would but generally the older artists were the nicest. It was, and at that time, it was at that time where some of the young people would come in, and I don't know whether or not they didn't know who we were or didn't care who we were, but they weren't the nicest. But like a guy like Billy Squier, he wasn't like a new guy, but he was such a nice guy and so full of fun. There were a lot of guys like that, a lot of people like that. I'll tell you who was one of my favorites artists that couldn't have been sweeter was Joe Cocker.
Oh, okay. Real cool. I saw him in concert once. Yeah.
What a nice man. Just delightful. Yeah. We had a lot of people went through that thing. The thing is, I'll say it because it's probably been out there and spoken. The person we had the most, we disliked person was John Mellencamp.
I want my MTV. You want your MTV.
Really? Now that's interesting. I can sort of see that. Because I've heard some things about him. He didn't really get what you guys were doing, right?
I think he had a chip on his shoulder. Not about that, but about a lot of things. I think he had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, he's a weird guy. Did you hear that story about how his son, beat the daylights out of him?
No.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, he got in a fight. His son is 6'5" or something. They got in some sort of fight, and it was all over the tabloids or whatever, but he had a black eye, and it was just I think he was on Letterman, and he was just I got in a fight with my son, and he won.
That's a legitimate black eye.
Yeah, it is. It is.
How did that happen?
My son and I had words. And he got a punch in, and I didn't.
How old is your son?
18.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
And Dave. He's 6'2" and weighs almost 200 pounds.
Well, what is the matter with you? Why are you picking a fight with the kid?
Oh, okay, well, whatever. Yeah. But, so, I'm trying to remember if there were any, people that, we had, a dramatic incident, and I don't really remember. I mean, some people were just more into it than others and would want to hang out at the stage. I tell this story, which was fun. There was this girl who was brought in by her manager, who I can't remember his name, but he was also her boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
And at the stage at the time, there was a place that was set up with it looked like a little booth at a coffee shop, which was part of the set, but it was a booth at a coffee shop. And the manager said, or somebody from the artist relations said, can we get this girl in? And I'm like, well, we have this thing in scheduled and we can't. I don't know if we can get her into interview and whatever. And the girl was standing right there. And I was going, we'll try, maybe if you sit and we'll wait and whatever. And so she sat, and she was wonderful and she was sweet and whatever. And she waited until we had an opening that we could get her in to do an interview. And that girl's name was Madonna.
I want my MTV.
Oh, okay. Oh, hey. Right here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And Madonna called me on the phone.
Oh, okay.
She had a brother I think it was Mike Ciccone or something. And she wanted me to interview her brother for a VJ spot.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was he any good?
But we did. No.
Consider me not surprised.
At least now I can say I got a call from Madonna.
Hey, yeah.
That's kind of
well,
cool.
You know, I think there's probably a lot of men who can say that, but maybe more famous.
Okay, I got it. Who else? Grace Slick called me.
Whoa!
Yeah,
hold on.
okay.
We love Grace Slick in this house. What can you tell me about Grace?
She had a daughter.
China, yes.
China. And she was worried about China. And she thought maybe if China came to New York and was a VJ and I could watch over her, she would appreciate it.
Wow. Okay.
But China came to New York, and we did kind of I forget how, and she was a beautiful, sweet girl. I mean, it was phenomenal. But yeah, so Grace Slick called, and she would call, and she'd say, "How's China doing? How's China doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, yeah, she's doing good. She's doing good." And I forget what happened, but yeah, she was good. We liked her. She was fun.
Very cool.
Now, your daughter, is she on this MTV all the time?
Well, that's up for grabs. She does it during the summer, and then she did it last summer and then went to school.
Her name is?
China.
And she's now a VJ on MTV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she may or may not be full on VJ. That's up to MTV.
Do you still keep in touch with China?
No, they have no clue who I am.
Yeah. But she was she was the youngest VJ ever, right? Wasn't she still in high school?
Yes, she was, yeah.
And she's just a kid, 17, right?
She's 16. Yeah.
16?
Yeah.
I wonder how she felt introducing some of her mom's Starship videos, like We Built This City. And
I don't think she cared. She didn't care. And then the other people that I became friendly with was the Zappa kids.
Moon, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Moon and what's his name?
Dweezil.
Yeah, Dweezil. I became friendly with them. They were VJs for a while, and Moon is one of my favorite people in the world. And who else? Yeah, so I can't think.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Something that became an MTV staple for many years was the MTV Awards. It's my understanding. Were you at all of those? Were you at the first one?
Yeah, but we didn't have anything to do with the production because they didn't trust us to be something that being that big. So we just got to be part of the audience. They and smartly so, because it was a big production, probably way overhead. They gave it to Don Ohlmeyer, I think his name was Ohlmeyer.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
He used to do sports for NBC, and they gave it to him. Yeah. So he did that. No, and all the those things we were I was fun. I got to, just hang out and party. So that was good.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. Any specific memories from some of those award shows? Do you have any favorite moments of even just being in the audience?
Well, of course, everybody was a little bit like when Madonna was rolling on the floor in her wedding dress. And then, a big thing for me was I got to go backstage on one of those because that's, you get to do that. And you go back into the inner sanctum, beyond the sanctum, there's always an inner sanctum. And there, I got to hang with the Rolling Stones, and that was like pretty cool. I mean, I didn't talk to the Rolling Stones or anything, but it was in the same room as them.
Being in a room with that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So.
And they sort of had a weird relationship with MTV too, because I know they were like big stars, but besides that "Start Me Up" music video, the 80s was the tough decade for the Stones. Like they only put out an album or two, and no real iconic music videos from that run.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think the most significant moment for the channel, just historically, was Michael Jackson's got a music video.
Of course.
And I remember watching it. They sent it down to the stage for us to watch it. And I think we all knew it was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I had a coworker who was, obviously older than me. And, he said, when he was growing up that when that video dropped, he knew all kinds of kids in his school who skipped school just to stay home to watch it. Yeah, so that's definitely a pretty iconic moment. So before that happened, one of the things I find most interesting about early MTV is that there wasn't a whole lot of videos. You guys you're starting with a pretty limited inventory, I guess you would say, and there's a lot of Rod Stewart, a lot of promo clips.
There
from
was
the
a
70s.
bunch of shows from England, and we had the Midnight Special. They were starting to do it. We were taking it from the variety shows, and which they started to explore creatively, which instead of just doing a live performance, doing more conceptual stuff. So they would take the artists outside and they would record it, and that became the music video. So anything that we could clip from those shows became a large part of our library.
Yeah. And then there's sort of infamous videos from lesser known artists that really only got on because there was limited inventory. I know Wall of Voodoo and Mexican Radio was an early, and that's a great video, but nobody ever heard from him since. Devo's got a big following, but Devo had a lot of iconic early videos, but they're sort of an off the wall group. I guess my question is, in the early days, before, Michael Jackson and Van Halen and Bruce Springsteen, in the very early days, did you ever feel worried that the material you had was not going to be enough to grab the audience's attention? Because you were going for a younger demo, and if you're showing videos from guys like Pete Townsend, they might not care, right?
Well, you know what? The best, and I guess they say ignorance is bliss.
Oh,
the best thing, the reason that MTV was able to survive was because we had no ratings. There was no Nielsen. Nobody knew how many people were watching at all. Clueless. There was no barometer for it. So everything was we didn't really, and again, I think that it was not about viewership as much as about establishing credibility with the record companies. That was the primary thing. It wasn't about, it wasn't like, in regular television, every day you'd come in and you check the numbers, with a rating or the ratings, how are we doing? At MTV, it was like, well, nobody's watching, so why check the numbers? We don't, forget it. So that was really it. So because we didn't have to reach, and, but by the way, the downfall of MTV, not the downfall, but we had to transition out of music because when we started to get ratings, we had to find ways to pump up the ratings, and you had to start coming up with creative, and that's where all the different shows came up. Because now there was a litmus test, a barometer on how we were doing as far as the show. That changed the channel completely.
So in those early days, did it really felt like it's okay? This is more or less just practice until we hit our stride.
No, I think I don't think anybody was thinking in terms of stride. I think, there was an overall strategy that was being given to us from the people from the top. So they would say, the people from the top would say, okay, go ahead and do this. And it wasn't like we were necessarily thinking, we would do what they said because we figured that they had this strategy. And we kind of knew the strategy was, again, going back to, we need you to do this because if you do this, and you hear it all the time, somebody from this record company needed to see this or needed to see this. So it was really, really about doing a dog and pony show all the time for the record companies and the artists. Yeah. That's what it was.
So, after you guys really became mainstream, I know in 1986, MTV, did it merge or did it get bought?
That's a good question. So originally, MTV was a joint venture of Warner Communications and American Express.
Right.
And it was Warner Amex. And so that's what it was. It was just Warner Amex for many years. And then I forget what year it was that Bob Pittman said, we should buy the channel ourselves and just take it over. And so they made it go. They brought it, and we went public. And it was MTV Enterprises, and some of us got stuck. And but that was short lived, because very quickly after that, I think, was it Viacom that bought it?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it. But the thing I want to mention about the reason I go back to the Warner thing, because Warner's at the time was run by Steve Ross. Steve Ross was a very, very, very well-known person in the history of that, of Warner Communications. Because Steve Ross was kind of the boss of John Lack and Bob Pittman, Steve Ross Frank Sinatra was doing a record at A&R, I think it was A&R Records, I forget on whatever it was. Frank Sinatra was doing a record, and he wanted somebody from MTV to go down there and supervise the filming of it. And that was me.
Whoa. Okay.
Whoa. I didn't get a picture of me and Frank either. Yeah, I didn't get a picture either.
Oh.
I was too intimidated. But I got to sit in while Frank Sinatra was recording an album with, Duke Ellington, not Duke Ellington, with he produced all of Michael Jackson's music.
Quincy Jones?
Quincy Jones running the orchestra, Lionel Hampton, all of these guys. He had there was bleachers of all these women from New Jersey who are all cousins were sitting there. It's a remarkable, remarkable day. So that, if you want to go back to one of my great highlights, that was a great highlight of life.
That's a hell of it. I mean,
did he take you aside and tell you who actually killed JFK?
My interaction with Frank went something like this. I went, "Hello, nice to meet you." "Yeah, nice to meet you." Okay, turned around, and then, and this is my big recollection of that evening. Well, there was a bunch of them, but it was a remarkable day. The way he commanded the room.
Oh, sure.
First of all, he did not like to do retakes, no matter how voices sound. It was it. I'm done. I want to go home, move on.
Yeah.
But they were doing this documentary, so they had all this lighting all over the place. And in a soft voice, he was standing by the podium, and he goes, and he's looking through the papers. And he goes, "If somebody doesn't turn off that light that's in my face, I'm going to shoot somebody." Just like low like that. You've never seen 40 guys scramble up ladders to get this light out of Frank's eyes. So that was memorable.
Oh, that's terrific.
Just a sweet little low voice, and boy, everybody ran. That's my that story. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think a quiet threat is always more scary than someone shouting, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more questions before we wrap up here. So, like, would artists who were sort of on their way out as far as pop stardom sort of get pushed over to VH1?
Oh, well, I don't know if pushed over, but I think there was probably some crossover.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was probably crossover, but yeah.
Okay. Well, then
but a lot of people who were our friends at MTV were doing dual duty. They were working both on MTV and doing VH1 at the same time. So it wasn't like separate offices. It was actually kind of, I think, run initially out of our offices. They were just, had different graphics.
Yeah. So I guess there wasn't really anything that would be considered like that would be considered competition for you guys, right? Except for other stations that were producing different material directed at the same demo.
You know how MTV started with the Buggles' "Video Killed the Radio Star"?
Yeah.
Well, today you would write down "YouTube killed MTV."
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it. When you could get it, we didn't have, and this was an interesting thing because there was a point, and I don't know the specifics of it because I wasn't involved in it, but just through hearing about it, there was a question as to whether or not it would have been in our best interest to start to pay for these clips so we would have exclusivity.
Oh, interesting.
So that was a very real discussion. Should we be the only ones to be able to play these clips? And I don't know what happened, but I don't think we started to get exclusivity. I think once people started to be able to find these music clips elsewhere, then everything shifted.
Okay. So what ultimately led you to leave MTV?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a personal question, but
okay. So if you don't want to talk about it, we can move on.
Well, no. I mean, the truth of the matter is, was going through difficult times. Bob Pittman, who had been my boss and whatever, was leaving. A lot of people were leaving, and I think it really was. But for me personally, it was kind of like that past year. My dad was dying, and my wife was having our first child, and there was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and whatever. And it was time for me to move on. And I came, and my wife's parents were out in California, and so we sought refuge out here, and there was business opportunities for me in California.
Gotcha.
That's so that's kind of what happened.
That makes perfect sense. So it wasn't a case of you felt no bad feelings about MTV for you at all.
Right? I don't think there's anybody that from MTV that I don't still. I mean, we're all I love. They are my family.
Yeah.
We are. There is no question that the people, and now that I've been doing this podcast, which I will plug. So anyhow, me and Gary Kroeger, who used to be on Saturday Night Live, and myself are doing a podcast called The Gary and Kenny Show, because we're not creative enough to come up with a really good title. Although we actually tried, but every other title was taken. So forget about that. But the premise of it really is it's two showbiz veterans who have stories to tell and people they'd like you to meet. So we have a lot of people that we know from our time in the television and business that we bring on. And many of the people that I bring on are my friend Doug Herzog, who I think also has a podcast now, was on. And I bring on many people that Beth McCarthy, who is a big time film and TV director, she worked with me at the MTV. A lot of people who have went on to become very successful. We just did one with Lori Zacks, who was another MTV person, who now owns her own company and produces, big time TV shows. And everybody from MTV right now is phenomenal. But anyhow, hopefully I invite, and maybe on this, you'll send a link and people can watch the Gary and Kenny Show, in which we also try to be entertaining as well.
Absolutely. And it is an entertaining show. Like I was telling you, I've watched a couple. I love showbiz stories, and I love, behind the scenes people. I did watch the interview you did with Doug Herzog. That was great. And I think, especially now when podcasts are, this is like cultivating history here by having, people who didn't, get to be in the limelight back when it was going on. They're able to tell their stories now. So that's why I like your show in particular. So let's talk about that show for just a little bit here. Like, I know you and Gary are old friends, but what was it that convinced you to put that show together and get it going?
Well, I wanted to do it a few years ago before podcasts only because Gary, who, like I said, was an actor, he's very socially conscious. And in all the conversations, he would be very, very talking about all the issues that were going on. And as a matter of fact, so he ran for office in Iowa. I think for Congress. And at that time, I think I'm not before or after, whatever, I was visiting him and we would get into these conversations. And I think it was pretty obvious that it was both, he was really informative and smart about the political stuff and had very strong opinions. We're both very on the, socially very liberal side.
I'm right there with you, man.
Okay. So Gary's very good about that. But we also, I recognize that when we got together, we would also have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun. And even his wife at the time said, "You guys are really funny together." And I said to Gary, "We should do a podcast." And I think Gary, well, for whatever reason, we didn't. And then the pandemic hit after that. And so for me, what happened was I had been directing shows for Disney Channel and all television shut down. Okay. Right. So I wasn't working. And I had too much time on my hands. And it was like, well, okay, now with all this time on my hands, what can I do? So, I went back and I guess the timing was right. And Gary said, yeah, let's do it. So we started doing it. And I'm really grateful that I have such a rapport and relationship with the guy. And we continue to have really good fun. So it's been wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it must be just super rewarding for you to relive sort of these, glory days, with MTV in the same way that it must be for Gary to talk about SNL, I know he's had SNL guests on your show with you guys. And yeah, it's nice to hear some of this backstage stuff and stuff that, isn't necessarily out there already. Because again, some of the guests you have on aren't household names, but I think that's where you get an opportunity for some of the most honest conversations, when there's not the pressure of the spotlight where you have to be like politically correct and you have to dance around, who you might upset, that sort of thing. So I think that's a really cool show.
It's great to hear the feedback. We that's what we really want. So if anybody checks us out, we'd love to get feedback and on the show. So that'd be very cool.
Certainly. I can tell you my favorite episode of yours.
What's that?
I can tell you my favorite episode of yours, and I have to ask you about it, is James Rolfe, who is a very influential figure in my life. Like, I think ultimately I'm here right now because 15 years ago I saw his YouTube videos. About 12 years ago I tried it myself, didn't really work, but I got the desire to be creative and produce online content.
Turns out he was a really inspiration for a lot of people, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find James? Or how did you enjoy talking to him?
We, as luck would have it, there is a guy who definitely deserves a mention. His name is Adam Kidd. Wait, I think Adam Kidd, who lives in Canada, liked Gary and I's show and volunteered his help to us. And he has been indispensable. I mean, he's basically a co-producer of the show. And he knows about, James and that stuff because he's a big fan. And I guess he reached out to James. And James, I'm not sure if he liked our show or whatever, but he came on the show. And I thought it was a really funny show. And I thought he was really cool. I thought we had a good time. Yeah. I got some criticism because, we got some criticism, because me and Gary we are the old guys on the show asking very pedestrian questions about, I don't understand. How does that work? Why do you think, so we do sound that, but I get, I'm just asking questions that we hope that we're interested in, and hopefully other people are interested in it as well. But it was great. It was fun. I hope he comes back. He was really a great guy about it.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. It's good to hear. I thought it was a cool interview. The problem is I'm sure you're learning this now, but posting stuff online, you just open yourself up for people to work out their own shitty issues in the comments, and
right. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it's
the
like
power
therapy
that the keyboard has given people is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a guy on who wrote a book about AC/DC, and he told me that the backlash he's received from that fan community about his book has been so severe that he had to get in touch with the FBI about some of it. And it's just a bummer to see online hate become a thing again and again and again. But I think when you court some controversy, sometimes it happens. I don't think you guys are trying to do that on your show, right?
No, but as much as you just don't want to pay attention to it, we're all human, and you read something. And I was talking to Gary about this, and it was like, Gary, if this is we're going to play in this arena, then we have to take what. These things are going to happen. That's what you get. You put yourself out there, you're going to get this kind of stuff. And you have to just dismiss it and just keep going. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Ken, this has been an absolute joy. I enjoy your show, so it was a treat to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing your MTV stories. As like a total 80s nerd, I love it.
You broke my cherry. This is the first time I've been a guest on a show. You broke my cherry
Yay!
there, Joe. Okay. So
All right,
anyhow,
man.
thanks, buddy.
And that was my conversation with Ken Ceizler, a former director and VP of production at MTV during its golden 80s era, and the current co-host of the Gary and Kenny Show, which is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I need to thank Ken for being such a fantastic guest and for sharing all of those great stories from MTV's classic era. You can find the Gary and Kenny Show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And as far as the immediate future of this show, we are in the process of scheduling some more interviews, but unfortunately, summer is typically a season where everybody's pretty busy, so most of those will show up in fall. Until then, I'll have some solo episodes, and we will also be concluding our Dylan Through the Decades mini-series, and that will be, of course, a look at Bob Dylan in the 2010s. So, stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching. Good night. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember the big 4 things you can do to support this show that don't cost a dime. Number 1, listen to the show. If you're hearing this now, that means you did this part already. Thank you. There is an infinite amount of content out there, so you choosing to spend some time listening to this show means a great deal to me. Number 2, if you like what we did here, please recommend this show to family, friends, or anyone you know who's looking for a podcast, particularly about music. Share our links in Facebook groups, subreddits, and recommendation threads. Whatever you can do is highly appreciated on my end. Number 3, find us on social media. Follow us on Twitter at PlayThatPodcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/playthatpodcast. And subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/playthatrocknroll. Lots of great material, like photos and vlogs, on all 3 platforms, as Play That Rock and Roll is very much meant to be a content hub as well as a podcast. And finally, the big ask. Number 4, please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I know this part is a hassle, but it really does help the show a great deal. Not just because it affects the algorithm, but also because it gives me something I can point to when pitching this show to potential guests. The more social media followers and positive ratings the show has, the better chance I have for booking high-profile guests for interviews. So if you take a moment to give us even just a 5-star rating, you are actively giving us a tool to do bigger and better things here. But whatever the case, I appreciate any and all efforts you take to support us here at Play That Rock and Roll. Be sure to join us next time for more great stories and music from the world of classic rock.
Too much is never enough.